Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Um, I wanted to, well, first off, I tried to make this video before and hopefully I can convey the enthusiasm I had the first time. But the first time that I made it, none of the sound worked out. It didn't come through my microphone. I didn't have this microphone on, and for some reason it didn't work on my computer. So now I'm trying to redo this, but I wanted to start out my video by saying thank you uh, for all of the comments, the support. I was absolutely blown away when I got on last week to figure out, posting another video. And then I saw that um, there were just a ton of views. I was not expecting at all any of that to happen. I honestly thought nobody would see these videos for like years. Um, so with that being said, I mean, I do feel like I need to give a little bit of clarity on my channel. I read through so many of your comments and I wish that I was able to just continue to sit there and read them because so many of you had so many wonderful things to say and you shared so many amazing experiences, and that is literally like my main goal at this point with this channel is just to foster that community. Um, so I mean, at least for me, I am in what, a lot of people refer to as a Mormon bubble. I can't leave yet because I'm going to school currently. And so like our family isn't going anywhere for a little bit until I'm done, but because of that, that was kind of one of the reasons that I created this little outlet for myself. So it initially started a kind of a little bit selfishly because I thought, well, nobody's going to see this for a while, and so I can just kind of rant and say whatever I want. So, uh, didn't really feel like a whole lot of pressure or anything to sound super amazing and put together because I really thought that it was mostly just gonna be me seeing a lot of this stuff if I wanted to go back and watch it or ever, like, show it to my husband or something. Um, not that I plan to, like, just sit and watch videos of myself, but I was like, it's just, like, a nice way to feel like I can express myself, and I have it on record, and I've been silent for so long because I've been going to church and feeling all these feelings about, especially about being a woman in the church and feeling like I can't say anything. So, because there are just certain things that you don't bring up because it's taboo and you know that you're just gonna get everybody's just gonna come down on you. In some of the nicest ways possible, but still, I mean, like it can be a very passive aggressive and sometimes even aggressive situation if you bring up things like polygamy, which is an absolute wonder in my mind because it's like I didn't make that choice for Joseph Smith to be a complete schmuck and do that stuff. Why shouldn't I get to bring it up and point it out at church? Because the men at the top say no. And nobody wants to have to think about it because then they have to face their cognitive dissonance over it. And that was honestly one of the reasons I didn't for a long time. I know I bring up polygamy a lot. It's because it's like the main thing that like really got me out of the church, but there are so many other things that I found out beyond that that absolutely just compounded um, onto that. And I mean, polygamy really is like such a huge central issue, not just for me as somebody, you know, that finds it like personally abhorrent and disgusting, but also like as you go through church history, you realize like it was an enormous reason for why Joseph Smith was in trouble with the law. So often it wasn't the only reason, but it was a very huge reason he was in trouble with the law and the subsequent prophets who also practiced it. But anyway, so much for obeying all the laws of the land and, keeping to the articles of faith and all that fun stuff. But that aside, I did want to give a little bit of context about my channel and the direction now that I've seen people watching it. I don't have the expectation that it's just going to be like crazy, crazy views or anything. I know that maybe I'll have ups and downs and whatnot, but I do want to keep you guys more in mind and anybody who does get value and validation from this. So I'm trying to maybe structure it a little bit better for the future. I wanted to be able to do this video last week, honestly, but I didn't have time because I had a couple of exams that I had to study for, and so I had already made the one about my wedding dress that I just wanted to get off my chest, and so then I put that on there. But then I was like, oh, and some people seem to be a little bit confused about like my experience with that. So maybe I need to be more clear in my videos going forward. So that's one of my intentions is to hopefully provide more clarity, but to give a little bit of background context with my initial video, because I also had somebody, at least one person, ask if I could post my initial confession video. I had thought that I had linked it to another video and maybe I just didn't do it right or I didn't do it in the right way. I don't know. I'm not super duper good with technology. Um, I don't use social media like a ton. I know a little bit of enough about YouTube, on how to use it and stuff, but that's why my videos are pretty basic and I don't have any like pretty thumbnail or pictures and stuff either. Maybe I should probably do that too. But just to give a bit of context before I get really into the weeds here, um, I initially created that confession video not with the intention to really have a channel. Um, I was getting to a point where I was starting to just have this internal dialogue back and forth of I should probably start telling people, and then I would feel myself pulling back and it was scary. Um eh, oh, I was already struggling with the idea of telling people, but I was starting to also crack because I felt like I was just living this lie. I felt like I was leading kind of this facade. And I really was like for in front of certain people. And even now I still find myself um just trained into like that shame of feeling like I have to hide certain things, like drinking coffee, which is so stupid. Because it's not a sin and I don't think it's a sin at all. But when I talk to certain people, I find myself even now still like avoiding using the word coffee, which is just utterly ridiculous. But it was, it's that kind of a feeling, and I'm sure that so many of you understand and know that, where it's just like it's scary to feel like you're coming out to people. And I ultimately decided after sitting there for a little bit thinking about it, like I could either go through this process several times over with like a lot of different people, or I can just rip this band-aid off all at one time. And ultimately, that's what I decided to do. And it really came to like a head when the missionaries were knocking on our door and trying to check in on us. And they had like, I knew what was going on. They clearly had been sent. And then I kind of just told them, hey, yeah, like my husband's not home, don't have time right now, sorry. And then they text me and they're like, hey, do you have time now? And I was like, look, I'm really not interested in having you guys come over and share a message. I'm really sorry. So I just they're just doing what they've been told to do. And I was trying to be so nice, but still firm with them that, hey, look, I really don't want that. And then immediately after that, like just a few days later, my husband and I both get a text from the ward secretary. Hey, the bishop wants to meet with you guys. Can you guys come in this Sunday? And I just was like, okay. Oh, my anxiety is really starting to ramp up. And this is not, I was like, okay, I think I just need to put it out there so that people know and understand like where I am. And I really don't want this kind of um this kind of communication or interaction. I don't want to be checked on. Um and I get that in the church like there's probably certain policy and protocol. I'm not super familiar with that side of things. And so I think that he was just trying to do his job as bishop. He's a really nice man. So I have nothing against him personally, but I told my husband I for sure cannot go and meet with him because I will unleash hell on that poor guy and he doesn't deserve it. Um, not on him personally attacking him, but I knew that I would be just unleashing a whole lot of like my reasoning, and I know that that wouldn't be well received, and it's just not going to create a good situation. It just wouldn't have made sense to do. And so that was another reason I decided to create my initial confession video. And because I I had sat there and thought about the fact that so many of us who walk away from the church, like we do it silently, and it's really kind of the expectation of the brethren at the top is like, good. We want people who are leaving to be silent, and I didn't want that. I wanted to fight that. And that's why I did it in video form. I'm sure a lot of people it made them uncomfortable and it was like awkward or whatever, but I was like, no, I don't think they should get to have their way, especially after all the lies and all the deception and all the accepting of so many people's um, income, their 10% of their income, who really shouldn't be giving any of it because they can't afford it. They're it like, oh, it floors me to think about the people who are just, I feel like at that point you're taking advantage of people who, like, none of these guys need this money. The church does not need this money. And there are people who are literally sacrificing a, a great percentage of their income that actually matters and would make a difference to them in the name of God because that they think that this is true. And and so I just started thinking about all these reasons. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this video. Um, Normally I don't do stuff like that and I don't really get on social media much. So I posted it to Facebook. I had posted it to YouTube and then posted it to Facebook. Because I also thought, well, you know, maybe this could provide somebody else some validation or comfort or um, some courage. I don't know. I just know that when, I was going through this, like listening to other people's experiences and stories, like gave me so much validation. And even after I had made that initial confession video, I still was just like, my heart was pounding out of my chest because I was so nervous to even post it. And I sat with it for just like an hour or two thinking, like going back and forth, like, no, I'm not going to do this, and then going, okay, I have to do this. And I I ended up getting that courage from watching and listening to another couple's experience and sharing their story. And they were talking about their trial, going through excommunication and stuff. And I was like, okay, whew, I can do this then. So then I posted it. And then because of the feedback that I had gotten, it wasn't just the support from so many people who were so loving. It was people who had like messaged me privately or had even like made comments on the post who had said like, "Oh my gosh, like that it was so great to listen to because like those were the things that I felt when I was walking away and like I wish that I had, been more vocal about leaving like you did." And I was thinking like, "Oh, I was surprised by that." So I decided to shift into, I actually started posting these videos on a separate, I think I mentioned a separate YouTube channel just because to some of the people that had watched that initial video, I was not necessarily wanting them to follow me in um um just because particularly one family member who had messaged me and said um well, I can just kind of read it. Um they had messaged me and said that they saw my I'm leaving the Mormon church video on Facebook. I didn't even know this person was on Facebook. Um but they said this was kind of what was frustrating was they said, I left the Mormon church decades ago. However, I'm a strong, dedicated member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Mm. So, yeah, I found this annoying because that video was really hard for me to make. And anybody who watched it who's a decent human being could see that. and I was not joking around in any way, but this person decided to respond to seeing my video with such levity that I was like, I don't think I want this person following me. And also because I was like, well, this will give me like a chance to just make my selfish content and, as my outlet for my issues with the church. Um, and then I thought eventually, somebody may stumble across like a later video way down the line, years later, and I'll hopefully be more put together and then it will be, helpful to somebody. But anyway, yeah, like this person had gone on to I had basically responded saying like I really don't care what anyone wants to call it. I'm done with it and I'm not going to nitpick over semantics. It's not important. Everyone knows what I meant. And then they came back with, you don't have to be so defensive, even though clearly they were saying something offensive and inflammatory, but whatever. They said, I figured you were going to quit the church. I've witnessed your demeanor fading with some of our discussion, because I had talked to this person a little bit about some of my concerns. And then they went on to say that they would always love me. Yeah, I don't even want to sort through all of this, but anyway, they went on to say that they followed up by saying, I just hope you and your husband never get a divorce. That would break my heart. Um, my husband was not super thrilled with this person when I read this to him, and I wasn't thrilled. I was like, nobody even alluded to that. Wasn't even in my mind, wasn't in either of our minds. So then I responded to this person. I said, that's your fear and problem, not ours. And then this person went ahead and continued to respond with levity and silliness. And then said, oh, by the way, I don't have any fears or problems because I don't care. So I was like, okay, well, I don't really need that person to follow me. That being said, because I didn't expect any like views or really anything at this point, I have come to realize that no matter what, I'm going to get those kind of people anyway, who are making comments. And um, I've discovered though that I have, less of an aversion to a lot of those comments just because like I don't really know any of those people anyway. I'm not close to them, they're not family members. And so even when I was reading through all of your wonderful and lovely comments and just amazing stories and experiences, for the ones that I was able to read through, I wish that I had time to read through them all. It still made me laugh to read through some of these other comments that were pretty funny. I had some person make a comment on my dress video. I cannot find it for the life of me right now, but because I think other comments have been made afterwards and it's in there somewhere, but it just cracked me up because he had said something like, "Oh, great, another video where you're just rambling on for 45 minutes saying nothing." And I just I just cracked up laughing. I thought that was so funny. But anyway, so yeah, it had gotten me thinking though, like not so much that one, but other comments that people had made where they were like, "Well, so like, what's your goal with this?" And they're like, "Because at this point, you just look like you're attention seeking." And I was like, "Okay, well, you know, I mean, if that's what you want to think, that's fine." But it did make me think about the goal of this channel. So, yeah, I would like to, provide more, hopefully, value. So I'm not doing what I'm doing now, where I'm just kind of flying off the cuff and saying what I'm thinking about. But I mean, I do try to put some thought into this where I can. I did want to read some of these comments though, just because they were so amazing. Um, if I can find the ones that I was thinking of. Um, I love this person. Shout out to Bex Trek 4829. She said, it's amazing how happy you think you are until you quit and find true peace and happiness. No more anxiety. Bye bye guilt. Hello, joy. We got this, girl. Oh, so sweet. And I mean, just yeah, comments like that. I mean, so amazing and so true, by the way. Because especially when you're raised in it, it's crazy for me to look back on that now and think like, I had literally no other perspective, but I was so certain of what I thought I knew. And this is something that I've been thinking about and was doing a little bit of research on because there's such a psychological tactic at play in the church. And I don't know, I would be willing to bet that it is absolutely on purpose because the men at the top aren't idiots. Um, and I mean, in spite of what the church tells us about Joseph Smith, um, kind of like there was a comment that RFM made on his channel where that cracked me up. I mean, he basically said, yeah, they kind of make it sound like Joseph Smith was just walking around with a drool cup in his hand because he was so stupid or something, and that's why it's so amazing that he wrote the Book of Mormon. But really, it's yeah, he may have had like a lower level education scholastically, but it's not like he was a complete moron, and he was very creative as a person. And you start to learn that and pick up on how absolutely cunning he was. Um, and I feel like that's probably the best way to describe his intellect. So it's not that he was a complete, just total dumb person. Like he had intention behind everything that he did, and he knew what he was doing. So, and he found ways around issues without getting caught some of the time. So, but going into all of that, or without going into all of that, I should say, just thinking about like what she said, where it's like you don't realize so much until after you're out, because you also don't even realize when you're in the church, like that you really don't have another perspective. Even when people try to tell you that you are sheltered or that like you've only grown up with a certain perspective, and I had people tell me that before. It used to make me so mad, which is another reason why I don't find value in really like info dumping on people who are members and who are really, really committed, because they're not at that point in that frame of mind where they're willing to listen to another perspective and actually go against the words of God from the mouth of the prophet. And so they have to stay away from us toxic people who are just, um, we've succumbed to the devil doctrines and whatnot. So, but it made me think of a quote by Joseph uh, Goebbels, I think is how you say his name. I could be totally butchering that, but he was a Nazi Germany propagandist. He was the minister of propaganda in between the 1930s and mid 40s, and he was the one who has been famously quoted as saying, "If you tell a lie enough, it becomes the truth," or repeat a lie enough, and it becomes the truth. Um, and that was something that had come to my mind as I started considering all the ways that, and reasons as to why I believed so deeply all the things um, that I had been taught growing up. And I was thinking, it's not that I was just raised in it. Um, there's that psychological aspect to that. And I mean, it really is just this, yeah, tactic um, where like there have been studies done where if you like repetition of certain things, if people see something repeated enough or they hear it repeated enough, they literally start to just assume or believe that it's true. And that is like the danger with issues like this. And not it's not even just, issues specifically existing in religion, obviously. And I mean, I don't want to get too far off topic or anything, or get into an area that would be any more controversial than this one is at this point. But those are the tactics that are being used, and it absolutely did make me think of politics. And I then realized, wow, the men at the top are nothing more than actual politicians at this point in my mind. Um, and because we are being told to just repeat things, so it's not that they're just being repeated to us over and over. And I'm not just talking about the Sunday lessons which are repeated over and over, which I've touched on, but also fast and testimony meeting. I mean, what else is that for? Um, I want to say that this quote I'm thinking of right now is by Boyd K. Packer. I could be wrong. But there was a quote by him that alluded to something like, if you, I think he was addressing missionaries, if I'm correct, but he said, like, if you don't have a testimony already before you go out on your mission, like, start bearing it, and that's how you gain one. Like, that is so, oh, it's so manipulative. I just, yeah, those are the kinds of things that I think of now and just cringe over when I think about my time in the church because you really just don't realize that you're doing it. And like I said, when people point it out to you, your tendency is to double down. So since I live in this Mormon bubble though, like this was my space to just kind of have an outlet, but I'm so grateful that it's turned into something more a lot faster because at this point, I'm hoping to host, more of a community where people can feel like they can express themselves. And um, if this doesn't pertain to you, for anybody who's leaving the comments about, hey, the church is true and you were too dumb to realize it, or sorry you couldn't become a critical thinker or any of that stuff. I mean, you don't have to stick around. Nobody's forcing you to be here. It's fine if you don't agree, but also I mean, you don't have to insult anybody here either. Um, People just want to feel like they're being heard, and that's so important for mental health and emotional health as well, especially in a difficult trial like coming to reconstruct or deconstruct or both your faith. Um, it's so painful and so many people in the church just really don't realize that just kind of similarly to like the issue with like LGBTQ people in the church. It's like the way that you're taught in the church is to be like, oh, you should love them and you should love everyone because that's what Jesus taught and that's what the Lord wants. But then it's like when we're actually talking about or addressing those people as faithful members, it was always like, oh yeah, that's so sad, that's sad. And like I still love them, but I feel so sorry for them. And it's like that's not what they want or need. That isn't like it's so clear now, like how little I understood as a member of the church about their experiences. And I still am learning, like so I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I know all about it, but it just like, oh, I felt so bad after starting to listen to people's experiences. Not bad in like a terribly negative way, because like I've come to terms with, you know, being able to accept that I things that I didn't know before. Um, but it's just you start to realize, oh my gosh, all this time I've been avoiding listening to so many people and and for what? Um, so I mean I feel like this is it's so true, like how pervasive the messaging can be, and it's I think done with such purposeful and calculated intent to ensure that people stay in the church and keep that mindset because we're just repeating stuff to each other in an echo chamber over and over. So yeah, um I really love reading these comments. This one I also thought was really great. And I'm so sorry that I can't read like every single comment on here, but a shout out to Shaylin Tompkinson 4790. Um, she put, I believe the same way you do, or as you, sorry, I was born and raised in the church. Please don't get frazzled over what people say. Those that watched your post have had a seed planted. They believe what they believe, just like you said, because we have always been taught that way our whole life. What I notice now is everything that happens in our life is a process. Don't feel angry or flustered. That's good advice. Just be strong in your own experience. Love and show others the beautiful love you have for Christ and spread that love everywhere you go. Forget those others with their fingers pointing at you. They just don't know what you know. They may not be ready to take those steps. Show them who you are by shining brightly. So well said and so sweet and such a compassionate message, I think, um, and sound advice, like I said, because in this process, and this will hopefully be my final thought here. That's my intention anyway. In this process, like I mentioned before, it can be really difficult to eventually segue or get to a point where you feel like you're not so angry anymore, and that really is very much like a trauma response. Like I definitely went through that process of feeling like trauma bonded um, to the church, and I don't know if that's like a perfectly like applicable, you know, term for this kind of a relationship. Um, but yeah, eventually you realize like you're going to go through these different stages and phases, and um, that was honestly like what she said. That was one of the reasons I didn't want to meet with my bishop because or the bishop, I should say at this point. He's a really nice man, and it's sometimes hard to in those moments where you're upset and you just feel like you want to unleash and like tell everybody everything all at once. And it just doesn't work out. It never works out that way. And like she said, people are just scared. And that's something that I've really come to learn. And like the friend that I info dumped on that I really should not have done that when I was just like in the midst of like all this information like circling in my mind that I was overwhelmed with and I was putting together, and it was, everything was becoming clearer and clearer. Um, you know, I know that it overwhelmed her, and she did not appreciate it. And she was so the thing is that she was actually very nice about it to me. And so then after that I was like, hey, I have got to rein this in. So that's why, these spaces are important, and that's why I wanted to do this. So next week, my goal is to have maybe something more put together for you guys. That's not me rambling, but I hope that this suffices for now. And also because I was planning on just going ahead and posting that initial confession video onto this channel as well, so that people who are wanting to see it can see what my initial confession was. That kind of started this whole thing. But thank you so much again for all of your kind thoughts and words and support. And I really wish that I could just read through like all of these for you guys. Because the ones that I was able to read through, like it just, I'm happy to know that so many people are so willing to support one another. And I hope you guys are supporting one another too. And I really see that in so many of the comments anyway. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.